Well, DOGE keeps on cutting. Should we be worried, like the Democrats and some unhinged protesters tell us that we should be? Well, let's just look at what DOGE has been finding. DOGE has terminated another wave of contracts. Around the same time, it discovered $300 million in loans had been granted to children. Yes, children. DOGE found that the Small Business Administration granted more than 5,000 loans totalling more than $300 million to borrowers who were 11 years old or younger. Now, the loans were issued in 2020 and 2021 during the pandemic, and it's not even clear what they were used for. Seems like a good use of taxpayer money, but it's not just millions and millions of dollars apparently going to children. During that same time period, the Small Business Administration issued more than 3,000 loans totaling of more than $330 million to people who were more than 115 years of age. So those borrowers were marked as alive in the Social Security database. And in one case, there was someone who was 157 years old receiving a loan of $36,000. Here is Elon Musk speaking about it.
Why are the 20 million people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database? Why were hundreds of millions of dollars of Small Business Administration loans were given out to people aged 11 and under, according to the Social Security? I mean, like, these must be some very enterprising 8-year-olds, you know.
And some pretty strong 150-year-olds.
Yes, exactly.
Every day, we are learning more about where US taxpayer money has actually been going, and it doesn't add up. The examples of waste and fraud and corruption, they're mind-blowing. Now, DOGE is taking action to stop this from being repeated, yet there are still delusional Democrats and federal workers who cannot cope with reality that this waste and abuse is being exposed. There are still some who are taking to the streets, kicking and screaming because for the first time they've been asked to list what they actually did at work.
When you wake up or when you're on your weekend and you get the fork in the road message, or you get the subsequent 5 bullets, hey, what the hell did you do, you lazy federal worker, this week? Is it that someone on X, the owner of X, speaks to you directly to say, what did you do last week at work? And if you don't answer, I am going to fire you.
Does it get a bit more pathetic every time you watch one of these protests? Look, DOGE is not perfect. Elon Musk and the DOGE team have been making mistakes along the way, and that deserves every bit of scrutiny. But when you're out there protesting against hundreds of millions of dollars being sent to people who are no longer alive and protesting because someone asked you what you do at work, it's a bit hard to support. Well, Democrats, they're in shambles at the moment. They don't know what their attack line is. They all behaved like children during Trump's address last week. But we're starting to get a clearer picture of which Democrats will be running for president in 2028, and the options are going to make you laugh. Failed vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, he told Politico that the Harris campaign should have rolled the dice a bit more, and a former senior aide told the publication that Tim was underutilised in the campaign. Look, I'm not sure about that, poor Tim. What could have been? And Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison told Politico that Tim Walz wished they would have put him out there a bit more because the world seemed to want more Tim Walz, and there were times when I wish they could have gotten more Tim Walz. Look, it doesn't get more delusional than that. So we could be seeing a return of Tim Walz. He's certainly returning to the TV and podcasting circuit. But I'm sorry, Tim, we have seen enough of you. If you want to help the Democrats, I would step right back. So there's Tim Walz, he's an option, and of course Kamala Harris, who is as eloquent as ever, explaining how she managed to get her food delivered to her house so she could post a photo of it during the Oscars.
So we did DoorDash because I wanted Doritos. And they were about, the red carpet part was about to start. Nobody wanted to leave to go to the grocery store. So it was DoorDash. And I'm thinking about this, so I was willing to give up whatever might be the tracking of Kamala Harris's particular fondness for nacho cheese Doritos for the sake of getting a big bag of Doritos as I watched the Oscars.
Yeah, so cringe. But the person who really appears to be gunning for the top job more than anyone else at the moment is California Governor Gavin Newsom. He's launched a podcast where he's trying to spin his image as someone who's not all that woke. He's trying to rebrand as someone who's a bit more to the centre. During his podcast interview with conservative and founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, he straight up asked Charlie for help, for advice. During the interview, Gavin Newsom admitted that he didn't like the video of multiple Democratic senators reading from the same script that went viral last week. He didn't agree with James Carville's advice for the Democrats to just roll over and play dead. He criticised Kamala Harris for parts of her campaign, and he admitted for the very first time that the issue of biological men playing in women's sports, well, it's actually not that fair.
What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor.
Is
like,
it
for
ideas?
example, I mean, like, if you want to, like, you have an opportunity to, like, you know, run to the middle and seize this mantle. Obviously, you're talking to me of all people.
Yeah.
So, like, you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue of fairness. So it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak up?
Look, I give Gavin Newsom credit for asking for help, listening to the other side. The Democrats need all the help they can get right now. But wouldn't it be refreshing if these were his ideas, not Charlie's? Why didn't it take a podcast with a conservative for us to hear some kind of common sense from Gavin Newsom? This debate about men in women's sports has been an issue for years, and only now we're hearing from Gavin Newsom what he really thinks, that it is unfair, that it is dangerous for women. Where has he been? What does he actually stand for? You know, Donald Trump says plenty of things that millions of Americans don't agree with, but you know exactly where he stands. And for Gavin Newsom, it is just so obvious that this whole podcast is a PR exercise to trick voters to thinking that he'd do a good job as Commander-in-Chief. So to those listening, do not fall for this act that Gavin Newsom is putting on. If you want to assess what Gavin Newsom is like as a leader, just look at the state of California. He cut millions in fire prevention, and under his leadership, the state had one of the worst fire disasters in history. He spent billions on homelessness, and it rose by 40%. He reduced penalties for violent crime, and crime is higher in California than anywhere else in America. The state of California is a disaster because of Gavin Newsom. Do not fall for it. This podcast is about trying to convince you that he's changed. He absolutely has not.